Energy is the main topic of discussion every single day. It's extracted and produced in many different forms. It's crucial to the world functioning since
the world will stop at this moment as we know it if the hydrocarbon industry were to unplug production, and mainly not only production but delivery of that production right now.
But don't worry, there's solutions, and we're going to be talking all about that today. Today, we're talking with Elena Morettini. She's Global Head of Sustainable Business at Globant and has been in the energy sector for more than 20 years. She's a huge voice in the energy transition and the energy sector, and today we're going to be talking about the future of energy in our world and all the big questions about energy that you always wanted to know the answer to. This is the Gen Z in STEM podcast. I'm your host, Maidrin, and I hope you're as excited as I am. Let's get to it. So, hi. Today I'm joined by Dr. Elena Morettini, and you're currently the Global Head of Sustainable Business at Globant. But also you have a long career path in the energy sector. I'm super excited to have you here today, and we're going to talk about the energy transition and some other topics. I could go in a very extensive overview of everything you've done, but I did a really, really brief introduction. But yeah, welcome. And do you want maybe to tell everyone a tiny bit more about yourself and who you are?
Sure. Thank you, Maya. Thank you for having me today. It's really a pleasure to be joining you in this space. Apologies for my voice, maybe not at the best. I just had a terrible cold, so that may still be some traces of it. But very happy to be here with you, and very happy to talk about energy transitions from somehow a technical standpoint. About me, I think you've mentioned my current role. Indeed, Globant, Global Head of Sustainable Business here, technology company, moving out of the energy industry to open up a startup back in 2020 and then into the technology world. So somehow quite happy to have sustainability dealt with from a STEM point of view. So science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and also very happy to be a woman in STEM. So I think that synthesizes most of it. Also very much fun of diversity and inclusion. So a very active thinker and doer of how can we support companies in their path towards an absolute diversity in the decision-making process and an absolute inclusion of everybody in trying to reflect society as much as we can in any working environment. So I think that on my side, that's more than enough on who I am and what I do.
Okay, so if I take it back a bit, so you've done not that many years ago, your bachelor's, your master's, and your PhD. You did it in earth sciences, geophysics, dynamics, and you got a PhD. But all of these topics ended up and touched on climate change, sustainable development, and things like that. So you've been in the energy sector for over 2 decades. So throughout that time, you started in the fossil fuel sector and shifted to roles involving sustainability and transition to the energy sector. But I'm curious, what first sparked your interest in the sector?
You mean in the energy sector or in the geoscience? Okay, in the energy sector.
Well, both, I guess.
Okay, geoscience was a bit of a sort of mixed choice after finishing the international baccalaureate that I did at the United World Colleges. So institutions that are quite famous today, they were not at that time. We're speaking about 1986, so really 8 years in which, of course, none of you were born, and in which the situation was quite different in terms of education. Still, the diploma, I guess, is the same one that you've obtained, and many like you have, many smart young students, but it is the same that I took long time ago. So out of that, I wasn't really sure. I knew I wanted to do science, but I also had a passion in history. I had been accepted to the London School of Economics to do history at the time. So my mom came up saying, well, I think that science and history can match in something like studying the history of the earth. Why don't you do geology? And it was her idea. And I still thank her today for that. So that's how I started geology, geochemistry, then became my topic of PhD. And that's where really my paleo climate history and passion started. So the whole thing about climate dates back my years of the PhD. So somehow a coherent, which doesn't need to stay so, but it has been in my case, a coherent beginning of that. And then the shift between geochemist and the energy industry was really driven by chance. One of the major oil and gas company came to the university, as they usually did, to interview students that were their last year of a PhD. I happened to be interviewed and offered a position. And that's when I moved to, I was in Switzerland at the time, and I moved to Northern Europe following my first job in the oil and gas industry. And despite the fact that oil and gas are in the focus of attention since many years for the aspects that we know about emissions and pollution, etc., I've always tried to contribute from within in changing that system towards a cleaner system, a more transparent system, and a system and a sector where energy production didn't necessarily mean harming the planet.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And I don't know, because in the world I grew up in, when I was actually, old enough to kind of realize what's happening around me, there has been a lot of talk when in specific in regards to the energy sector, to us being conscious that we need to go more into, I guess, clean energies and that kind of thing, and go maybe a bit further away from fossil fuels and things like that. But I'm curious how the discussion about energy and its sourcing has changed throughout the time you have been in the energy.
Let me say something up front, Maya. I think that the energy sector, its decisions and its understanding has to stay in the hands of technical and scientific people, because energy is not an easy topic. And the entire extraction industry is very complex. It's very it's very heavy in terms of decision making because of the investment, capex and opex that goes into it. And that is also true, of course, for nuclear energy and for the majority of the energies we're talking about, right? So we need expertise and we need knowledge to thoroughly discuss all the externalities of any energy matrix and system. If we do not have that technical knowledge, coupled, of course, with economic knowledge, but I mean, business cases come on top of scientific and technology knowledge about a sector, because it's different. I mean, I can input so many variables in a business model for any economist to analyze that come from the expertise in terms of energy. Then if those variables are not in, no economist will ever be able to make up or understand a business case in that respect. So knowledge comes first, and it is especially so for the energy sector. So first of all, we need to sit at the table at which experts are present to evaluate all the positive and negative externalities of any energy matrix we choose. And we need to also understand that the energy matrix, apart from nuclear energy and a few others, it is very much related to geomorphology and geography. So we do not decide which country will be strong in a specific energy sector. It's nature and it's the planet that decides that for us.
And so, then how and when did you sort of decide to shift your career away from I guess a fossil fuel based company and really start to tackle cleaner energy and sustainability?
So as I was telling you before, there was a moment in which I decided I was going to open up a startup on energy transition. And that is because I understood that the system of oil and gas and what we call the legacy energy industry wasn't ready, at least in South America, where I was working at the moment, in 2018, when I started deciding that energy transition was going to be my next topic 100%, the energy wasn't ready for that jump. So the energy industry is ready now, but wasn't at that time. So 6 years ago, still in certain areas of the world, not all of them, but still the majority. So it's not something against the greater South, which I'm an absolute fan of. On the contrary, I'm always very supportive And I think that that is one of the greatest geography, also because of the forestry coverage, that we can do a lot of things in terms of compensation and carbon credits. So I think that actually the greater south of this planet has a major chance and opportunity with the whole energy transition business. So sorry for this long parenthesis. What I want to say is that at that time, the industry wasn't absolutely convinced and ready for this. And I decided to come out because I was absolutely ready and convinced.
Yeah. But that's actually interesting what you say about like the industry not being ready. Because okay, so like as much as like the world is quite interconnected right now, there is like reliance between nations and like for instance, talk about like clean energies and investing in it. When like scarcity occurs, which has happened with like what happened at some point, well, with the Russia-Ukraine war, well then nations like Germany, for instance, were thinking of going back to coal to meet the demand. So, like, how do you balance this like urgency of like climate action with the actual economic realities faced by like traditional energy companies and the demand needed in nations?
I think that this is a key question. So we need to get a few facts in the correct order down for everybody to make sure that we are clear on the topic. There is one fundamental point, which is the world will stop at this moment as we know it if the hydrocarbon industry were to unplug production, and mainly not only production, but delivery of that production right now. Okay, so everybody needs to understand that no matter what we do, and no matter how conscious we are of the entire energy problem as related to the climate problem, or better said, the climate issue is an energy issue, first of all. Despite being absolutely aware and convinced of that, we also need to know that if we unplug the hydrocarbon industry in this very moment, everything will stop. So, despite where we decide to be on the side of the argument about energy transition, this is a fact that we all need to be aware of. So there is no misunderstanding and misconception of if the hydrocarbon industry stops now, apart from the nuclear energy, everything else will not be sufficient to provide the same amount of energy that we need to survive on this planet at this very moment in time. So what we can do is find alternatives sources of energy to the one we're using at the moment. And the one we're using at the moment is also a result of our political decisions. So the world decided about 30 years ago that nuclear was not an option in certain countries, like mine in Italy. We voted when I was 18 on a referendum, nuclear yes, nuclear no. The country went for a nuclear no. France went for a nuclear yes. What do I think today? I think that France took the right decision. I voted against it. And this is when I say that the energy matters cannot be dealt from neither a social nor a non-informed standpoint. We need to know what we are doing, and those decisions or guidelines need to come from the expert. If somebody would have told us that the nuclear energy was the cleanest energy we could produce at scale, because at scale is the key word that differentiates clean energy, viable clean energy, from energy that doesn't have the same density of production like renewable energy, then we could have made a better informed decision. So there is a matter of awareness, knowledge, consciousness, understanding that is fundamental when we get to decide on our energy matrices. The thing to say is that if we have to put facts in order, first one is if we unplug the hydrocarbon industry, for which we have decided long time ago, today the world would stop in terms of life on the planet as we know it, and in terms of our activity, because we do not have enough energy produced in any alternative ways at the moment. And the rest, it's a matter of choice. So everything else is what we have decided so far. Now, can we change that decision? Can we change that way of producing energy? Yes, of course we can. Can we decide to abate the CO2 emissions related to the hydrocarbon industry? Yes, we definitely can. Nobody says that. So going back to your question in terms of rules, did anybody decide that or impose on the energy sector the legacy energy sector to produce at lower CO2 emission, nobody did. So it is only today that we're becoming conscious and that we are imposing on those companies that had freedom to produce oil and gas the way they wanted, that they need to do it at lower emissions. Low carbon energy is something that we are hearing, discussing, sharing in terms of not only belonging to a pool of experts, but being democratized just since maximum of 6 years, talking worldwide. The entire world talking about energy transition is 2018, not way earlier than that. Somebody can say, oh, Elena is wrong. It was 2015. Maybe. Let's date it back, 2012. It's not more than 10 years that we're talking about a major revolutionary issue, which is energy transitions. Energy transitions you don't do in one day. There is nothing about energy that you can do in one day. So there is no switch on and off of a system. There is a change of culture, of mindset, of understanding, of design, the way we produce, the way we distribute, the way we basically activate the entire energy supply chain and value chain cannot be done in a second. It needs time.
Mm-hmm. And that is, I guess, maybe the energy transition, like this whole process and rethinking the way we think
It is a
energy.
process. We can accelerate the process with technology. We can accelerate the process having the right people discussing the right concept. We can accelerate the concept as the European Union is doing at the moment, but we cannot make it happen in 1 second. So going back to your question, were we disappointed about the choice of going back to coal? Yes, we were, but do not be surprised. Last year was peak coal production and use for energy, 2023. So even away from the recent past times that we're talking about, energy transition 2015, 2012, you name it. For me, it's 2018 because I know that it is the moment in which also the southern part of the world got involved into that discussion. So if we talk globally, it is definitely 2018. If we want to talk about an elite or a group of people already very aware about this whole energy transition, we date back to 1985, 1990s. But I mean, the entire world being on somehow to say a similar page, because it wasn't the same page on energy transition, it is 2008. So very recent times. And so, of course, because you need that energy and you cannot live without, any country will secure, and that's the subject about energy security, its own energy the way it can. Because don't forget that there are people breathing oxygen in hospital, that if we cut any energy supply all of a sudden because of a war or because of a pipeline that doesn't bring us gas anymore, have to take a decision. It's on our lives. So those are not easy decisions. Countries shouldn't go back in their energy transition path, but there are moments in which those decisions are tough and need to be taken. But it is a matter of having the right expertise brought together to make those strategy for any nation, and having, of course, regulations to contribute for that. There are wars that we have lived in our own history, linked to the fact that we have oil wells that can cross surface boundaries. So geographical boundaries are just a definition. But the reality of a reservoir underneath in the subsurface is not a definition. It's where it is. It has geographical coordinates. So with an extended well, I can reach out a reservoir that doesn't belong to my country. And this has been the cause of so many wars in the past.
Yeah, I'd actually love to like connect to that because like, yeah, energy, as you mentioned, is like essential. So like, depending on like the country, each country has different resources. So how do you think the energy transition differs based on like geolocation or region?
Enormously. It differs enormously, and we need to be aware that Brazil is not Italy, that Brazil is not France, that Argentina is not Germany, and we need to know, first of all, how we want to strategically approach the energy matrix that naturally is given to us. And then to that, we can add every sort of infrastructure on top. But of course, The energy infrastructure is a very expensive infrastructure and needs to be deployed at scale all across a geography of countries that can be very big. So it is a complex subject. It is a complex decision to draw a roadmap for an energy strategy of a country that is a low carbon energy strategy. It is very important that each country has a pool of experts that can draw its roadmap to a strategic energy deployment and development according to that matrix. So we mentioned Brazil. Brazil actually is one of the most lucky countries in the world. It has all sorts of energy sources, from hydroelectric to gas and oil and gas to, of course, it can have any sort of renewable. It has the entire forest available there for balancing and also for creating new assets of tokenization of Amazonian assets to create carbon credits. So it's one of those reality in which there is an enormous complexity of the energy matrix, but there is also so much richness and availability that will be very different to draw a plan for Abu Dhabi in terms of energy transition than for Brazil. So we need to know the subject and we need to have the expertise sitting at the table to draw and impose on countries the most low carbon energy plan for each one of us. That is the energy we deserve.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. And as a scale, I mean, maybe you don't exactly like know this, but it's like energy itself. How important do you think it is in general to like coming closer to like a global decarbonization?
Okay, let's put a few facts on the table in a straight way. The lowest carbon intensive energy is, of course, nuclear energy, which has different type of problems in respect to nuclear waste. But if there is zero carbon emission energy, it's never zero because there is an embodied carbon that goes into the building of infrastructure, the building of the premises. So nothing is zero carbon at the moment unless it is sustainable by design, which means, for example, if you go back to a nuclear plant, that you decide to use a concrete which is made at zero carbon emissions. So the entire supply chain and value chain for anything that we're building needs to be zero carbon if we want to have an end product which will be zero carbon. But at the moment, there is nothing which is zero carbon or almost nothing. So, but there are energies whose production is zero carbon, and that is, for example, the nuclear energy. The oil and gas energy can be produced at way lower emission than it is done today. So there is a low carbon approach to energy production that does pertain to each single energy realm. And if we go to renewables, where everybody thinks that is the cleanest way of producing energy, of course, the source of energy is clean because wind is clean and sun is clean. But the devices that we're using to produce and to make that type of energy viable are not necessarily low carbon. Solar panels need to be assessed in terms of life cycle assessment to know where the production of that siliceous material that goes into the solar panel and how do they end up in terms of landfills and waste. The entire life cycle assessment, what it's called from cradle to grave, need to be calculated in terms of carbon number. Nobody does it today, or still it's not a common practice. It is my desperation to get LCA, life cycle assessment, included in every calculation of every solution in terms of energy or non-energy that we find today. Whatever does not have a life cycle assessment measured cannot be compared in terms of low carbon numbers. So we call it low carbon because, of course, it is less. It goes without saying that it's less polluting a solar panel than an oil well. It's no brainer to say that. What it is important to do, it's the calculations behind it, behind the metal, behind the emissions, behind the solar panel, behind the landfill that we finally dispose that panel to. If we do not do those numbers, which we're currently doing for almost every product and process today, we cannot get those equations right. There is nothing we can do about it. It's not qualitative. It is absolutely quantitative in terms of numbers and calculations. And this is why it is such a STEM subject. Will be the business model, which we actually can do today based on LCA. We have LCA business models, and this is where we need to move to, in which not only it's the financial, it's not the financial parameters that only enter a business model, but it's also the material flux that goes into those models. So when we couple finance and material sciences or energy mass balance, that we can actually take into account the entire impact, and we go back to the positive and negative that's we're talking about before. But it is again a complex subject. It is very articulated. It has very long supply chain and value chain. So we really need to get our numbers right within and embedded those chains. Otherwise, we will never understand the total impact.
But I actually do understand very well what you mean, because in our course we were actually doing the life cycle assessment, and it was just for a bridge. But for instance, one of the bridges were made out of timber, but just the lighting system with the lithium and the raw sourcing of materials nearly had more footprint than the whole bridge. So it's yeah, it's really important to track it, and I really hope the LCA becomes more important and also required.
Yeah, for those that are listening to us, what Maya just said is at the key and at the base and at the core of new material science, where AI can help us a lot. But if we do not do the calculations that Maya will just said, we will never know if that bridge is more impactful on ESG, environment, society, and governance than different type of bridge made with different materials in a different location or in the same location. We need to compare apples with apples. We need to get those numbers to decide on the material that will actually form that bridge.
Talking about the importance of technology and software in this whole process. It's so crucial.
Yeah, fundamental.
My next question is actually, are there any misconceptions on the energy transition that, if any?
I think that all that we've mentioned so far can be misconceived if we do not know the science behind it and the technology behind it. So, again, I think I'm absolutely for a differentiated matrix with every type of energy included. Also, because we can run into short bed of energy, so we need to have plan B, C, D. I mean, we have really to have thorough strategies that I feel we didn't have in any region of the world. So the energy strategy part, it's really lacking of long-term planning and full understanding. Yeah, the misconception that we call clean energy something that is clean in terms of sources, but it's not clean in terms of supply chain and value chain. So we really need to be very careful of calculating the numbers that we were saying before, to be able to say this energy is cleaner than this other one, because energy doesn't get transmitted without an infrastructure to us. So we need to calculate the impact of that infrastructure on our river systems, on our fragile earth ecosystems. There is a lot of calculations that we need to do, and it's a massive, huge mental and cultural shift that we have not undertaken fully so far.
And so, speaking of energy strategies, I guess, do you see challenges present for large corporations or actually small and medium enterprises in implementing technology and strategies that are environmental responsible and tackling the energy transition?
Oh yeah, well, we're still not there. We're still not deploying technology at scale, helping us to accelerate this energy transition. It's all about time. We have no time. We have an Agenda 2030 that it's ending basically in 5 years, and we need to show results and decarbonization path and decarbing carbon CO2 production curves. We're not seeing that. We're not seeing any Keeling curve, which is the curve that measures the concentration of CO2 in the atmosphere, going any better, and we possibly will not. So we really need to take up technology to scale, to speed up this whole process. And that is not easy, especially for small industries, but we're all very much involved in trying to have small and medium industry picking up the least expensive but useful technology that we can. And of course, we're pushing big corporations to do that at any stage. So technology um, is the enzyme that can speed up this whole process of decarbonization. And yes, there are lots of obstacles and barriers still, but there is one but. Ignorance is possibly the biggest barrier to all this. Because there are institutions and organizations like the European Unions that are giving us so many guidelines in this twin transition, which is sustainability and technology at the same time. So digitalization and sustainability as one journey only and not two separate journeys. I mean, there are so many. And for you young people, go and read the disclaimers and the summaries and the introduction that all these new regulations like CSRD, sorry for using the acronym, is basically the new corporate responsibility directorate that the European Union is pushing forward for all type of small and large industries that needs to be regulated by 2026. Go and read the introduction. The introduction is a piece of literature of the most illuminated one in terms of why we need to do this, why we need to be sustainable, why we need to take care of energy transitions and climate change. And I mean, we think that those texts and directories are boring, time-consuming, long-written, no smart brevity. It's exactly the contrary. You'd be surprised on how fascinating those short texts are in explaining to us why we need to use technology, why we need to embark in the process, why we need to be aware and acknowledge of what is going on. So please do read these things. Do it on ChatGPT or whichever GPT you want to use, or generative AI to help you out. But get informed and stay informed of what institutions like European Union, the SEC on the US side, and many other supranational institutions are actually providing us in terms of knowledge today. And stay tuned with the updated technology that can actually bring this to scale. There's so much available.
Yeah, everything needs a why. And speaking of why should someone go and enter the energy sector? Slash, what advice would you give to a student or like a young professional aspiring to enter the sector?
Because it's very much needed, because we need diverse talent, brilliant mind, diverse cultures, all the geographies of the planet involved in this to be able to grow the plans we were talking about before, the roadmaps and the strategic plans. We need plans. We need plans. So students, brilliant minds, everybody needs to participate to how to grow the best energy plans for our future, because without energy, there is no life. So why should you be involved in the energy sector? Because energy is life, energy is vital, energy is like talking about photosynthesis. I mean, why do we need to understand those processes? Because they're really vital for all of us. So whoever has an inclination for science, I mean, we need literature, we need human resources, we need humanistic sciences. I'm very much an absolute supporter of the multidisciplinarity of what we need. We need psychologists, we need all sorts of disciplines, but we need more women in STEM, and we need more brilliant students dealing with the new complex energy system. So please come in. We're going to welcome you all, and there's going to be jobs for you all.
And lastly, what are your hopes for the future of the energy sector?
I think everything we've said so far, it's really a wishful thinking. It's hoping that there will be no barriers in terms of discrimination, salaries, inclusion in the energy sector. And I really hope that more and more minds will put their intelligence into finding solutions to all this. So what is my hope is that this is going to be a more inclusive sector, that this is going to be a more open sector, not only driven by geopolitical interests, but driven by science and by a solution-oriented mindset for the biggest problem that humanity is facing, which is climate change and energy at the moment.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. You're so inspirational for like everything you do, and just for like, you know, being like a reference for people and for women in the energy sector. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Maya, and thank you for pursuing this type of initiatives. I think you're doing a great job and you're serving a larger community with your interest and with your perseverance. So we really need young people like you to support us and to guide us at times also, because there is no hierarchy, neither of age nor of roles. There is a hierarchy of brilliant ideas, and we need to follow that if we want to strive and be successful in solving this problem. So it's me thanking you for doing what you're doing and for communicating these messages and plans and ideas so that we can all contribute to that. So indeed, thank you very much for taking the courage, the time, the initiative, and of course, time from your private time to be doing all this. Grazie mille.
Honestly, I think Elena is like one of the voices of her generation when it comes to energy. She knows so much, and as you've seen, she's super passionate about it. If you want to see more about what she's saying and what she said in the past during conversations, or even when she went to COP28, you can type up Elena Morettini and see all of that, and maybe follow her on LinkedIn and such. But other than that, we release Gen Z Insights very soon, this summer. And after that, in September, we'll be back with Expert Insights. So stay tuned, because it's going to be good and you don't want to miss anything. So subscribe, follow. We're now also on LinkedIn. And if you're in Enschede, hit us in the DMs. We'll give you some stickers. We've got 6 different types of stickers. Bye.